Parents of Reddit, what is the weirdest or creepiest thing you found out about your child, but you never will tell them that you found out? Story 1, you know that game at the carnival where if you throw a ring onto a glass bottle, you get a prize. And sometimes there's a special bottle, and you can win a giant prize. My kid won this giant panda bear. It was like 4 feet tall. It was huge. Well, that was a few years ago. Once while he was 12, I was helping my wife put away laundry while the boys were outside playing. I walk into my son's room, and he wasn't outside playing, naked as the day he was born, with his business stuck in a hole in the panda. They're like mad, that poor panda. Story 2, not my child, but my nephew, he made a drawing of an Easter bunny that had been shot by another cartoon character. I asked him why did that guy shoot the Easter bunny, and my nephew said because it made him feel good. Story 3, I remember when I was a kid, I hated when my mom used to clean up my room. I always enjoyed my privacy and didn't like when my mom cleans up my room, especially because she would get mad at what a mess there was. I also collected few magazines that was before internet and kept in my wardrobe under the socks. One time I get back from school and my room is cleaned up, I opened a wardrobe and saw my clothes nicely put in order and a shelf with socks in a mess, just like it was. I go angry my mom, and I ask Mom, did you clean my room? Yes, she couldn't maintain eye contact. I asked you, Mom, not to do that, okay? I won't anymore being 12-year-old little. I knew she found it, and it was more awkward for her than for me. She didn't clean my room ever again, but she forced me to do it myself. Edit why my top comment ever had to be about my mom finding my stash. Edit to a word. Thanks, guys. Story 4, I'll tell him when he's old enough to understand. But my youngest son is a chimera. Part of him is his twin sister. Story 5, I was with my dad when he found my brother's stash on our computer. My dad just clicked out of it and did nothing. Also, my brother had horrible taste back then. They were the biggest, fakest you could imagine. Story 6, this is something that my parents don't know that I know they know. When I was a kid, I had some issues at school. A teacher asked me to draw a picture of my family, which I did. In that picture, I was bowling with my family. The only problem was that I had drawn the picture with my older brother shoved into a bowling pin, and I was throwing the ball at him. A couple of days later, I was sent to spend an hour with my parents' friend, who I realized 15 years later was a child psychologist. Now, my parents have never brought this up to me. I only know this because of memories I've pieced together. That's how to be weird feeling to see your kid with supposed hatred towards your other kid. My brother and I have had our issues, as all brothers do, but we get along well enough. I hate that my parents had to go through that. Story 7, semi-related. Once accidentally opened a forgotten stash while browsing a shared laptop with my mom for pictures of our close family friend who had just died in a freak accident. Hardcore amateur homemade, penetration, blowjobs on the face. My parents had just divorced a year or two earlier around when we got on the laptop, and my mom had a weird thing against in general, so I immediately said it must be his hidden stash. She believed me. But that also apparently struck her curiosity, so she insisted on us going through the pictures and looking at them to see what he was into. I kept saying, no, it'll just delete them. But she wanted to see more because she was shocked I'd be interested in such young girls, as they were all in the 18 to 20-year-old range. Which made sense for me, considering I was in that range, whereas he was in his 40s. Being oblivious to how internet works, she said she wanted to see if she recognized any of the girls, I think. It was weird. I was so panicked. I don't remember specifics, really. My mom has always treated our relationship more like a friendship than parenting, though. So that's the story of how I shared a viewing session with my own mother. Oh, and this all happened while we were sitting in a coffee shop for the free internet. I guess this isn't really related at all. The stories here just reminded me of that previously buried memory. Story 8, one weekend my parents went rifling through my room while I was away. Don't remember where I went, but they had the entire weekend to search my room. I was probably 14. I had my stash of prawn pictures hidden on the top shelf of my closet underneath a box. I thought it was the best hiding spot ever. There was pictures of feet, girls with on their face, up-close vagina shots. I was 14, so my prawn game wasn't advanced yet. Anyways, apparently my mother found them and freaked out at what kind of prawn I was looking at. She threw them all into a garbage bag along with all the other trash they had found. My dad salvaged my prawn treasures from the garbage and put them back where she had found them. I get home. My dad just says, Mom found your pictures in your closet. You should find a better hiding spot. Edit sorry for spelling wrong. I thought it was a little funny. You'll never have fun on the internet ever again. Story 9, I checked my 12-year-old daughter's internet history, and 2 questionable things popped up. Top 10 signs your dog is dying. Our dog is fine. Never has shown any signs of sickness, and a bunch of flash games where you're a nurse for pregnant famous cartoon characters like Elsa or Monster High or whatever that look like they've had the beat out of them, and you clean them up and help them have babies. Very disturbing, but completely normal to her. She loves those games. Story 10, found out my son was masquerading online at 7 years old as a girl. Got into forums and little groups, Tumblr, and whatever else he could find. Also, he could exploit dudes for free Lego stuff. I stumbled on a messenger conversation where he had been talking in PMs about nonsense and 12-year-old girl stuff, where had pretty much been hanging out in all these places and using horny dudes to send free Legos to the house. And all that happened on a pretty locked down computer. Just goes to show those parents out there, your kids likely know more than they'll let on. I mean, he was 7 and writing out blog posts about menarche and made up middle school drama. We talked about it, and within 30 seconds, he said, "No, I'm not a girl, but if I pretend I'm one, everyone's nice to me, and they give me their old Lego sets." Story 11. A few years ago, I used to use my nephew's phone to take pictures of my drawings because he had an iPhone, while I had a piece of flip phone at the time. Anyway, one day I was using his phone, and a text came through. I read it out of pure curiosity and being nosy. Turns out he was sending a girl he knew pictures of my drawings, claiming he drew them. Not really weird or creepy, but funny. I never put him on blast for it. Story 12. Got a little brother. I am fairly certain he's a sociopath. He enjoys playing Sims, but purely to burn the people to death. He will burn the house down, then reload the game to the last save time, and do it again and again. I recently went on his phone to install a game for him, and noticed all the other games he had. At least 5 games that allow you to torture people in different ways. A lot of people are saying it's normal to do that in Sims. I need to stress that he does it every single time he plays the game. He plays it a lot, and he laughs when they die. It's quite creepy, actually. I myself have killed Sims in multiple ways. I once built a room on my 2nd floor just to store guests and let them die. I did this once, and then I got bored. My brother has done this every single time he plays, and it doesn't quite explain the fact that he also has a number of torture games on his phone. Oh, and he's 11 years old. Edit 2. One more thing, my parents are aware of it. They've tried to get him to stop, but he will still do it when they're not watching. Edit 3. Some more detail about his Sims playing. He has never played the game for anything other than killing them. He once asked me, when I was installing the latest one for him, if he can still kill people. If the house doesn't have an oven, he will literally sell everything in the house to buy one. Story 13. My grandma once told me that when my aunt was but a child, she heard noises coming from my aunt's bedroom at night. When she came and the light was on, and my then 3 or 4-year-old aunt smiled at her, "Look, Mommy, I painted the house. There wasn't any actual paint in that room, though. She had smeared the walls with her own." Story 14. When I was 11, my dad found out that I had been watching his hentai and discovered a sketchbook full of badly drawn anime people in my room. Needless to say, I wasn't allowed to draw anime for a few years after that. I'm a girl, not a boy. XD. Story 15. This thread reminds me of the poor guy that caught his son abusing the family dog, and since then his life went all to... Story 16. Probably when my parents found a picture in our house of my dead uncle, but he was naked and his was out behind my bed. When my uncle died when I was 4 years old, we went to his house and took what we wanted to keep. He died when I was 4, and we went there when I turned 5. I found a picture of him standing in his bedroom, naked. I don't think it was hard, but I can't remember a whole lot. Anyway, I was just discovering myself and whatnot. First started masturbating when I was 4, and I kept it. I didn't have any real appeal to it, just curious about it. So back at home late at night, when everyone was asleep, I would put my covers over my head and pick my pillow up where there was this photo of my naked uncle. I had a little flashlight, and I would just look at it for a while before putting it back under the pillow and falling asleep. One day it fell behind my bed, and I looked for it, and it was gone. I know, it was under the bed now, because a week later my parents asked me if I had a picture of my uncle. They found one behind my bed. I had shared a bunk bed with my brother who was a year older, but I don't think they suspected him. I feigned ignorance about the picture, though. They, of course, didn't say he was naked or show me it, but I knew it was the only one I had of him, so that must have been a little weird, their 5-year-old daughter with a picture of her naked uncle. Story 17. My parents found out, unknown to me, that I had an underground black market selling swords and knives that I bought or forged myself to other kids around the neighborhood. They haven't talked to me about it yet, but they've noticed the sudden influx of cash from it. It has been years. Edit words. Story 18. My daughter is 7 and a prodigy, which is great. However, she can read everything and read it quickly. She stole a magazine I had with an article about Saddam Hussein's trial, and it had a picture of him ready to be hanged. I only found out when I heard her at her room reading it saying, "Good, kill him, he's evil." I stole it out of her room after she fell asleep, and I threw it out before anyone bust my... I honestly had forgotten I still had the magazine on a bookshelf between some reference books. Story 19. When I lived with my dad, he forbid me from closing my door, plus he had tons of stuff in my computer room, or always made an excuse to come in the room. He walked in on me masturbation at least 3 times, and always would just walk in, look at the screen, look at me, then stay in the room to do whatever he was doing. It was so weird it almost seemed like he wanted to happen upon it. Jesus. Story 20. On behalf of my stepdad, I have a story. When I was a teenager, I literally got into a contest with a couple friends. It started with us trying to fill pop cans with a bladder's worth of, but progressed to wine bottles and whatever other container we could get our hands on. It wasn't long before this became a deranged collection of bottle trophies, filling an entire bookcase in the spare room of my parents' house. Well, my stepdad discovered this one day. He refused to say how he figured out what the bottles were filled with and made my friends and I haul the bottles out and dispose of them. We hid them in the forest oddly. The next day we checked on them and they were all smashed. Stepdad swears he didn't do that. I suspect some poor sap discovered the bottles weren't filled with wine either. Story 21. Late to the party, my sister got her period when she was 9, and over the next 9 years I'd find dried up used tampons stashed around the house in drawers and in purses, backpacks. I brought it up to my mom, who vehemently denied anything was wrong with her golden child, and I was chastised. Dysfunctional family story for another time. Never found out why she was hoarding used tampons. Google doesn't come up with any answers either. Story 22. My parents found my sister's stash, but I got blamed for it. My sister was like 14 to 15 at the time, and had saved an impressive amount of yaoi and other weird animated Japanese on the computer, primarily of nature. They thought it was mine as I am their openly gay son. My sister to this day thinks it's hysterical. Story 23. My parents said they found gay mail on the computer when brother was 13 or 14. They wanted me to ask him about it. I was like, nope, no way in. That is embarrassing for everyone. No one ever said anything. Story 24. So this is going to get buried because it's not about somebody something, but whatever. So let me start by saying that over the years I've had a ton of problems with disordered eating, self-harm, depression, etc. And my family is very bad at pretty much all forms of communication. So I've had a lot of stuff go missing from my room without it being mentioned. Razors, purge bags, food ID hidden, a couple suicide notes, and nobody ever mentions a thing, even though we all know that everybody knows, to know if that all counts or not. I'm sort of venting TBH. Story 25. A throwaway. I was 14. One time, after a glorious late-night masturbation session, I ejaculated and immediately fell asleep with my semen drying on what I call my catcher, which is the space between your pointer finger and thumb. So I zonked right out after climax. Lights on, door wide open because my parents had our bedrooms separated off into another hallway with a set of doors in between. Basically had enough warning to zip it up if I heard the outer door open, but alas, I passed out immediately after jizzing. I woke up with a fresh stack of laundry piled up at the foot of my bed, the lights off, and the door closed. My stepmom must have walked in after I passed out with laundry, saw me naked, sprawled out with drying on my hand and stomach, dropped off my laundry, turned off the light, and never breathed a word of it, bless her. When I was a kid, my mom walked in a room while my cousin and I were looking at Vanessa Hudgens' pictures on the desktop computer. The computer was too slow for me to try to X anything out before my mom appeared behind me. She was not pleased. Story 26. I was tucking in my 2-year-old. He said, "Goodbye, Dad." I said, "No, we say goodnight." He said, "I know, but this time it's goodbye." Had to check on him a few times to make sure he was still there. Story 27. My son is 5. Last year, when he was 4, I found all these personal videos headshot on his Samsung Galaxy, and there was one where he used every bad word he knew. I don't know who Connor is, but he's a total meanie, stupid face. He should definitely not mess with my kid anymore. Story 28. We found my little brother when he was like 3 or 4 years old, eating the dead flies that collect in the space between the window screen and the window. Well, we didn't actually see it. We just saw him by the side of the window, smiling with fly wings and legs in his teeth. Oh, my dad tells a story to people with no reservations. Story 29. This is embarrassing, but whatever. Not my parents, but me. When I first discovered I could ejaculate about 12 or so, I didn't really know what to do with it, so I would blow into my underwear and then hide it under this gap under my desk shelving combo unit thing. Anyway, I started running out of underwear very fast, and my mother became suspicious. Came home from school one day to all my undies clean and folded on my bed. No discussion was had. By the time those undies would have been found, you probably could have snapped them in half or at least heard a crunch with every movement. I was Story 30. When I was young, like 8 years old, and before I even knew what masturbation was, or even for that matter, my cousin taught me the glory that was the pool jet. I used to spend days with my propped up against that, feeling very good, yet never understanding what was happening. My parents and sister laugh about it a lot today. It made discovering masturbation a little less fun because the first time I rubbed one out, I recognized the feeling, which made it a little less whimsical. Ah, the good old days. Story 31. My dad, sister, and I found my brother's BDSM stash years after he moved out that he had completely forgotten about. My dad quickly got rid of it before my mom could find out, with my mom being a hardcore Christian and all. Funny thing was, it wasn't in any of the trash bins when I was curious to see where my dad dumped it. Story 32. I guess for me, it was about my stepdaughter, and she knows I know, but her mom doesn't know. Her internet friend Kim is not just a friend, but her girlfriend. Story 33, went to see if my 4-year-old was asleep. He was playing with his pecker and talking to himself. Not sure if it was his first, but still an oddly proud dad moment. It's going to get interesting. Story 34, I checked my younger brother's internet history. He was 7 at the time and saw lots of searches for naked girls. And what dose of vagina luck lick? I never told my parents, and I won't ever tell them I found that. Way too young for that. Story 35, I had an almost empty bottle of lube in my room, and one day my mom cleaned my room, and it was in the garbage. She never said a word. I think the worst part was when I bought a new bottle and found it moved from where it was to my dresser. It was like my mom said, find a better hiding space before I puke. Story 36, we live out in the country and have a septic system. When my daughter started her period, we told her not to put her tampons and pads in the toilet. Flash forward 2 years. I was pulling dirty cloth from her closet when I noticed a plastic bag hanging from a hanger. My curiosity piqued because it seemed really full. I thought it could be more cloth since she seemed to enjoy hiding her dirty cloths. I reached in and pulled out a handful of used Maxipads, apparently when I told her not to flush them in the toilet. I failed to say, put them in the trash. Story 37, found pee in the Barbie doll bathtub. I knew for sure it was my daughter. I mean, she's the only suspect, or Barbie really loves golden showers, but yeah, cleaned it out with bleach and hot water and never said a word because I knew it would have embarrassed her. I think she did on the day. I told her no more playing in the sink. Because of the massive amount of water, I had to clean up after. Story 38, not my parents, but something that I did. It was sometime before Christmas, and I happened to know that they left the presents down in the basement. Well, one day I went down into the basement to look at said presents. I had to, but I really didn't want to get caught or something, so I just pooped in the corner. Nevertheless, they found out and were not happy. Story 39, I'm not a parent, but it'll speak on behalf of my father, who definitely found my very large and diverse toy collection. I was around 24 at the time, but I'm sure that devastated him. Story 40, daughter here. I fell asleep once after using my vibrator. Mom came into my room in the morning before she left early for work to tell me to feed the dogs, and in my half-asleep state, I just whipped my vibrator from under the duvet and gave it her. She went, what do I do with this? And I went, just put it in the drawer, and went back to sleep. Woke up realizing what I'd done, and to this day, do not know why my half-asleep self thought it was going to end well. Story 41, totally going to tell my son about the time he whipped his little out in the busy Old Navy checkout during Christmas. We had to be stuck in line for another half hour with parents keeping the other children in line away from my son. The flasher. Story 42, not my kid, but my grandma told me that my cousin plugged up the sink on their boat and let the water run. When she heard it running and turned it off to ask why he did that, he said he was trying to sink the boat. He also told my grandparents' cleaning lady one day at a family gathering that he wished he had a gun so he could shoot everyone. Story 43, looking back at my childhood, I can say with 100% confidence that my parents never knew I masturbated, even though I did it 3 times a day for 7 years. How do I know? They never found out. Well, I have an unconventional method. In fact, I never used the normal way. Everyone that knows had a reaction like what the... I'm convinced that if my parents saw me doing it, they would talk to me about it. My 7-year-old has been sneaking Pokemon cards to school in her socks. Just found out today. Story 44, when I was around 10, I went to a week-long Scout summer camp. There were both women and male counselors there, kind of keeping an eye on the thousands of kids that were there. I was having some downtime, so I decided that I would run around and steal some of the women's underwear. I would go into their canvas tents, into their backpacks, take off my shorts, put their undies on, and then put my shorts back over it. I would take at least 1 pair from each backpack I came across. I went to numerous tents repeating this until I had maybe 20 pairs of women's underwear on beneath my shorts. The size was getting obvious, so it was time to retire to my own tent and reap what I had sown. I was very covert in my actions and felt confident that I had not been discovered. Later that day at announcements, it was disclosed to a group of us that some of the women had reported missing their underwear. It was stated generally. Everyone was kind of surprised, shocked, and taken aback. Despite this, no one ever approached me specifically, nor did it ever blow back on me. Now, many years later, I have not done that since. Story 45, not a parent, a brother, a middle brother, but I've seen my bros leave traces of stuff on the computer. 10 years ago, back when the incognito window wasn't a thing, I would look at browser history and see my older brother's stuff for hentai. Would occasionally see a printed out hentai comic stuffed under my grandparents' clothes. Also saw a chat log saved into the computer saying he came onto the keyboard. Baby, one day I left a swab of tissue with near the table before going to sleep, played WoW after beating the horse. He found it and proceeded to tape it to the chair with a sign, TGBREAKFSTBUF50T. IS this yours, he's living with his girlfriend now. So I pick on my now 13-year-old little brother. I don't ever tell him of the incognito window, and I always see games on browsers. Now, I also see swabs of tissue near the computer, but I just tell him to throw it away and be a responsible masturbator. Story 46. Me and my friends made a contract for our other bigger group of friends for a club, an inscription fee, monthly payments, and a huge set of rules. The plan was to fund drugs and get high. At the time, I shared my computer, and my father found the file. Because I was dumb. The father of one of my friends is a cop and was pissed, called it a cartel. Story 47. Late to the party. But I have a story on behalf of my mother. On a summer night in SoCal, she walked outside into the open garage to hear a whispered, "Do I kiss it or lick it?" And in response to lick it, I guess this was from her 5-year-old little girl me and her daughter's best friend Garrett. Still cringe-worthy. Story 48. Well, I overheard this convo between my little brother who was 10, my older sister who was 21. Sis, if you don't, I'm going to bite you in the PP. Bro, if you do, I'll pee in you. Sis, he'll bite. Bro, I'll pee. WTFFF, I'm scarred for life. Story 49. Snooped through my brother's DS years ago and found a video of him picking his nose. I don't think he knew the camera was forward-facing my sister's, and I still laugh about it. Story 50. I moved out from home for a year, and a few days after moving out, I suddenly remembered that it was hidden under a chest of drawers in my bedroom. So I raced home to get rid of it to find that my mom had cleaned my room top to bottom. It was still in the same place, but I still wonder whether or not she found it. Story 51. Not my kid, but my cousin. Apparently when he was 2, he locked his car in the freezer, and it died. There was bags of frozen peas stuck to it, and they had to throw it away. My aunt and uncle haven't told him, and it's been 12 years. Creepy kid edited his cat, not his car. Story 52. The only computer used to be an open area of my house, with little alone time ID. Get about 30 minutes after school before my dad's wife would come through the door. I'm sure she heard the on multiple times before I closed it as quick as possible before she came through the porch door. Story 53. Underwear magazines would go missing at my house. It was PG-13 at the worst. The only picture I remember was a lovely woman sitting backwards on a clear chair. Mom wasn't about it. She'd go from playfully teasing me about it to white-hot fury. She didn't handle my budding sexuality well, which I can't really blame her bad for. But a few years later, when she caught me with the entrant after I got lazy complacent and stopped scrubbing the internet history, she lost her mind and tried to take away everything out of rage. I lost it because I knew Dad had VHSs in the closet, and the hypocrisy was too blatant and shitty. I was a 14-year-old edgelord with a near autism level affair, so that was legit too much for me to handle, and I didn't drop it ever in front of her friends, our family dinner, outings, anything. Every chance I got, so why can Dad look at? But I get grounded for amount of time, currently grounded. It was more important for me to rub her nose in the double standard than to maintain a level of social decency, or even get the punishment over with. Over the course of the month, her reason for grounded me slowly slipped from his wrong to ruins computers to shut the up. I probably tripled my sentence for not shutting up about it. I took it way too far. I still have problems leaving well enough alone when I know I'm right, but this was just... I still feel kind of bad about it. But I also still feel kind of mad when I think about having TV taken away from me for looing at the free preview pages of Twisters.com. Story 54. I moved back in with my mom for a short period when I was 26. I wrote HP Draco Harry / fanfic at the time. She went into my room to steal from my weed stash, glanced at my laptop screen, read a few lines, then wouldn't look me in the eye for weeks. She brought it up at Christmas lunch one year. Said she was very disturbed by what Shed read. It wasn't even that dirty yellow, that'll teach her to pinch my weed. Story 55. My friend used to then put the tissues in his wardrobe drawer after he finished. Then one day when him and I came home from school and walked to his house, he looked in the drawer and they were all gone. He went to his mom and told her he would blow his nose and put the tissues in there, and she just nodded and said, "Oh, not me, but my husband, he bought a fleshlight when he was younger and lived at his parents' house. He's in a desk drawer. When he moved out, he never grabbed it for whatever reason." I went there a couple days later to grab stuff and check his desk drawer. It was gone. His mom threw it out. I was mad for him because those things are expensive. Story 56. When I was little, my stepdad took my brother and I to the store. My brother was running up and down the aisle while pushing the cart. I was 3 to 4, and he was 8 to 9. He jumps on the cart, and it flips with me in it. He ditched me. When it fell, my stepdad picks me and the cart up, and my brother is still running around him crying, and my stepdad's pissed. He grabs my brother to tell him to behave, and he goes limp and starts screaming at the top of his lungs, "You're hurting me. Ow, please stop hurting me." My stepdad let go so fast everyone was watching us, and my brother went back to running up and down the aisle. He never took us shopping again. Story 57 was with my dad. When he found my brother's stash on our computer, my dad just clicked out of it and did nothing. Also, my brother had horrible taste back then. They were the biggest, fakest you could imagine. Story 58, not a parent, but it's my parents' reaction to me as a child. In elementary school, to start with, I consistently redlined all the evaluation and IQ tests. I actually alarmed some of the teachers and administrators. The cool teachers were cool, the others were not. Despite it being completely apparent to me exactly what was going on, neither my parents nor the school personnel would explain the test results or why my parents got called in every year for private conferences. I thought it was a move. Really, I knew what was going on, but they wouldn't give me the stats. It wasn't until high school and the SATs, etc., that I could actually get results, though the national merit status didn't say anything more precise than the top one. By definition, as best as I've been able to learn, I was at least 2 orders of magnitude above that. I'm still pissed at them for keeping it from me. What good does that do? Honestly, I was just great at taking those tests. I love them like the video games that didn't exist yet. I read instead of wasting time playing team sports. That's really all there was to it. Story 59, stepson 1 set naked and afraid to record on the DVR. I deleted it even if it's not naked, people. It sounds stupid. Stepson 2 does not flush the toilet. Even after pooping, he is 15 years old. Stepson 3, I find his Trojan wrappers upstairs and once downstairs by the sofa. Story 60, not my child, but used to babysit an 8-year-old. I don't know how, when, where he learned this behavior, considering his father's almost never around because of business trips, and is too consumed by work to even interact with his son. The boy had a habit of sticking his hands down south to doodle with his noodle all the time, in public and private everywhere. No shame whatsoever. And then he would do stuff like eat, draw, whatever. Plus, he didn't seem to grow out of the phallic phase, since he kept putting his hands in his mouth after touching his wedding tackles. Story 61, hello Reddit. I am your parent. I have found out many things about you. Go outside and stand in the sunshine for a little bit without your phone or a bowl. It won't kill you. Stop plastering your online for horny 10th graders. You're 25 years old with a decent job, for goodness sake. Put away your cumbox and Doritos. FFS, go clean your room, because I said so. You're already weird. No need for me to tell you. Story 62, every time I discover a weird thing, I immediately out them and embarrass them so they don't go down that path. So I have no answer. Sorry, edited to stop the hate one. I was being sarcastic too. Buried in the comments is what I was referring to the time my 17-year-old had a jar of in his closet because he didn't want to stop gaming to use the bathroom, and he forgot it there. That needed to be outed and stopped. Now, raise your hand if you ever forgot a jar in your closet. If you have, they'll bet you don't admit it because it's ridiculous. Story 63, my brother had this issue. Went into his closet to look for something, saw one of my stuffed bears, picked it up, my finger slipped into a hole. Cue me screaming and washing my hands nonstop. I feel bad now, cause he was so embarrassed once my mom came to see what all the commotion was, but since then found that he had violated at least 5 stuffed animals that were in the house. Story 64, I humped a life-size alligator stuffed animal to climax a lot when I was very young, before I knew what masturbation or orgasms were. I think one day while cuddling it, I just realized how good rubbing against it felt, and it just progressed from there until I discovered my hands could do that instead. Story 65, one of my good friends played cello in middle school. He was also notorious for loving and jerking off all the time. One night, he got the bright idea to his cello. In his mid-orgasmic ecstasy, he lost his balance and fell on it, breaking it. Had to explain how it happened to his parents.